Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining. I'm sure, I hope actually you all have your hot chocolate. I've got my rooibos honey and tea. And guest, I hope you have something next to you that, keeps you a little warm.
I'm sorted, yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, all right. So let me get the formalities out of the way. Let me begin by welcoming all our guests, welcoming our ambassadors. I think we have Ambassador Apandula here for our value-adding ambassadors and our guests and any of our hosts. Welcome to Men of Value. This event, Men of Value event, is for everybody. So both for men and women. And then we've got the Men of Value program, which is where us guys huddle together and we have a conversation. And I'm sure others are going to join as we progress. Special welcome to our guest, Mr. Jeff Phiri. Jeff and I, it's funny how life happens. Jeff and I actually know each other in another life. We just never met, but we know each other in a life because we were crossing each other like this. Jeff I did 5 years of schooling in Zimbabwe. And Jeff's school and where I schooled went far apart from each other. So as a consequence, we have mutual friends that we know. So this is crazy, but this is the 0.001 degree of separation we're at now, thanks to the power of social media and how we've actually come to meet. So Men of Value, this is, for us, it was for me, but us, because Jeff is an integral part of this, so is Mbulelo and others, has become a really important conversational platform in order for us to discuss certain things that I think need to be discussed, because the starting point for action is to make sure we know what we're going to act, and that's when the discussion actually kicks in. At this point, I'd like to send apologies for the normal host, which is Derek Mzonelli. Derek, unfortunately, has to attend a funeral, and I am going to try and step into one shoe, not both, of his, because I know I won't fit in both, and try and conduct this. So what are we trying to do here? We're intentionally influencing men to heighten their level of self-appreciation and self-development. And what we try to do very specifically in Men of Value event, as opposed to the program with men and women, is to try and have that conversation jointly, right? Where we are going to talk and share, where we learn and grow, where we examine, and where we say things that, may make the hairs in our back stand up, but that's okay. I mean, this is what we're supposed to be doing here. And I really want us to have conversation, and the way we're going to proceed with today's process is I'm going to introduce Jeff a little bit. Sorry, Harold, I'm just going to mute you. I'm going to introduce Jeff, and then I'm not going to do too much of an introduction because Jeff's introduction is going to come in a little bit of what he's going to say. And then I'm going to give Jeff, half an hour. Half an hour, Jeff, just to soliloquy the conversation. Yep. Please, folks, when Jeff is speaking, something comes to mind, put it in the chat group. If you've got any questions, chuck them in the chat group. We will leave the last half an hour for interaction and conversation. And it's nice that we have a sort of blend of men and women today, and young and old. So without further ado, let me, Jeff, when I was going through your profile, I said, let me just pick the highlights, because Jeff, in his young few years, has done what most people combined haven't done. When you go through his profile, it's pretty elaborate and pretty impressive. Jeff, you're a man who's, I know, extremely well read. I wonder if you even have a TV at home, because all you seem to do is read. Extremely well read, but extremely well experienced. But one of the things that I really like about you, Jeff, is that you are an unapologetic advocate of Africa. You are a true believer in the potential of it, and you are the only person I know who has the extensiveness of advocating Africa the way that you do. So Jeff Phiri is the director, talent and leadership development, corporate learning for Africa at DHL. So if any of your parcels are not getting anywhere, this is my complaint. No, I'm only kidding. I remember at SAA, when they got my number, anything that happened on SAA, I always got a phone call. So as you can imagine, Jeff is an executive and a senior executive at DHL, and was previously the managing director at DHL International in actually Zimbabwe. So Jeff has a passion for people, and I think when we've been having our conversations in Men of Value program, it's been very evident that a lot of the stuff that you have ingrained in you is as a consequence of your love for developing and working with people. He has a passion for the development of people and is excited about helping individuals reach their full potential. That's why we get on. So he believes
precisely.
he believes in the lifelong learners for more successful professionals and lead a happier life and more fulfilling life. So lifelong learning. Again, this is why we, interact. And obviously, you're not just a proponent of that. You're somebody who has, favorably implemented it. Jeff is a fervent advocate of Africa, as I said, and Africa's growth story, and is passionate about purpose-driven and servant leadership. And you being in South Africa, both of us knowing Zimbabwe and Africa the way we know it, you knowing the whole of the continent the way you know it, this servant leadership is so important. Jeff, I'm going to leave it there, because if I carry on, we'll take up the session. And it is without much further ado, I'm going to hand over to you to give us a little bit more insight in yourself, and also give us a little bit more insight in what you're going to be talking to us about today in Men of Value. Thank you very much for being with us.
Yeah, Vic, thank you very much. And you're so generous, yeah? As you were reading that and introducing me, I thought, who is Vic introducing? Yeah, really, really generous. And it's great to be here. What an honor. So I'm really super excited to be here just to have a conversation. So I'll try and keep it short because I believe in engagement. Vic, your vision, it's unbelievable, because this, you are into something. I can tell you, you are into something with this program, Men of Value. It is key. I was involved in something in Zambia last week. I think you and I had a discussion. I was in Livingstone, and we're talking around something similar to Men of Value, but they call it Kingdom Men. But it's the same. That's for me, it's actually the same. Yeah. So it's really a privilege to be here, and I hope we're going to interact. I claim not to know all the answers. Yeah, because the answers are seated around this Zoom meeting. So just to get us started, I love interaction. I just want us to go to our chat and just tell me where you're dialing from, because this is not my program, it is our program. So just go to the chat and just type where you're dialing from. Yeah, I just want to have a sense where our ambassadors and our guests are coming from. Yeah. Just, okay, all right, they're coming through. Thank you, Val. I see Alberton, I see Rumsich, I see Johannesburg. Awesome. Centon, Westrand. So we've got a lovely mix. So it's great. And thank you. I just wanted to, Vic, this was just to test that it's not you and me, but we've got people, you know, they talk about that now the world is changed. In the 21st century, we get the computers asking us human beings that we are not robots, yeah? And we have to confirm I'm not a robot, but it's a machine asking that. It's really something. We've got somebody from Mulemo from Northwest. Welcome. So it's really it's really great. So I was thinking, what am I going to talk about when I was invited? And I wanted to keep it quite simple. And we've got a rich content. I'll actually urge anyone who's joined in for the first time, please make sure that you access our content that has been done. I see our chaplain is here, and I want to recognize him because he gave us a powerful session. I also recognize my big brother Mbulelo. He's an inspiration. So I recognize many people here. So it's great. I share lots of stories. So I talk lots of stories. I'm well traveled just by the way, based on where I work. I've worked in 3 continents. I work for the most international company in the world, so I have access to 220 countries and territories. Yeah, I have been to 89 countries through my work. Yeah, so I've been exposed to different countries. I've worked in Saudi Arabia, I've worked in Dubai, I've worked in Malaysia, Singapore, the UK, the States, Africa. I have 2 offices here in Johannesburg and also an office in Ethiopia. So pre-COVID.
So Creature community, I've got super exciting news. We've got a guest for the Creature.
I used to 2 weeks in Ethiopia, in Addis, because it's central, so you can launch anywhere in Africa, because by the equator, and Johannesburg, where my family is based. So I used to do 2 weeks Johannesburg, 2 weeks in Ethiopia. So I'm quite well-traveled, 89 countries and counting. I have a target I'm not going to share here that I want to reach, but the travel gives one a perspective. I was talking to my wife the other day. We were on the freeway and there was lots of traffic. She was driving and she was complaining about traffic. And I said, sweetheart, this is a joke. You're complaining here. If you go to Kenya, they have roundabouts. They don't have many traffic lights that or robots that we have. They have roundabouts. And if you get to the roundabout, I kid you not, you can actually make an omelette and eat it, yeah? Because you just get stuck and people switch off their cars and just wait for the police to let them know. If you go to Nigeria, the traffic is a nightmare. Why I'm sharing this is that sometimes our perspective is different. When we do not travel, we just get to understand our area, our situation, our circumstance. But if you travel, your mind is broadened. You start appreciating home. I can tell you, the roads that we have, the road network that we have in South Africa, it's world-class. Because I've seen it all. I've seen Egypt, I've seen Nigeria, I've seen India. Our road network, it's one of the best. It is world-class, yeah? So we talk about traffic jam. Yes, we have a traffic jam, but it can't compare to Kenya. It can't compare to Tanzania. It can't compare to Nigeria, where it's bumper to bumper. So travel gives us that perspective. So one of the things that all of us should aim for is to travel. Just go driving to a neighboring country. You'll get to appreciate home more because it just gives you a different perspective. Yeah, and it's important. I'm going to be sharing 3 stories, and my talk, today's talk, I've titled it simple, and it's covered by the previous speakers. They've already talked about it, but I want to unpack it based on that. And I've simply titled it At the Table. At the table. What happens at the table? It is important for us as men of value to understand what happens at the table, because everything happens at the table. And this is my my program today. I'm just going to be talking around what happens at the table. What are the expectations? Why do we have some of these things that we have, the challenges that we talk about? I mean, Brother Mbulelo talks about the inspiration from the late Desmond Tutu, around upstream and downstream, what is happening. So it's at the table. This is where we need to pack it. And Vic, your program is superb, because we're not only talking, we're having the conversation, but we need to start with the end in mind. Why are we having this conversation? What is the aim? What is the result? What is the outcome? What do we hope to achieve by having this conversation? Because I can tell you, we are not politicians that meet in a Politburo or in NEC. We want to take action, yeah? Because leadership, in my view, it's all about movement. So I'm always inspired by motion detectors in the houses, yeah, or outside. So when there's movement, the motion detector comes on. And this is exactly what Men of Value is all about. It is about exactly that, yeah? We want to have action. We want to have movement. So we must inspire each other so that we reflect, so that we go and stand in front of a mirror and say, what do I need to do in my circle of influence? Because it starts with one voice. That one voice can change a suburb. That one voice can change a community. That one voice can change a city. That one voice can change a province. That one voice can change a country. That one voice can change the world. We are currently having the conflict in Ukraine that is affecting Africa. We need to talk about it. I hope when we have the conversations later on and Q&A discussions, we'll talk about that. I hope we also talk about what happened on the 22nd of March in the Grammy Awards. We need to talk about that because it's all about Men of Value. This is what we need to do. We must be practical. That's what we need to talk about, yeah? So our conversation should be around that. It should not just be we talk, but what is the outcome? What do we want to achieve? We must begin with the end in mind. So I'm always inspired. There's a story that I share, and that story is the lesson that I learned from my 12-year-old son. Then he was 12 years. Now he's 18. So it happened 6 years ago. Vic and I support one team in the UK in soccer, yeah? We support, there's a team that we support. I don't want anyone to run away from us here, so I'm not going to mention the team, yeah? But we support a team, Vic and I come a long way. And there's a team that we support, both of us. We were playing our arch rivals one Sunday, and it was not going well. And I was like this, looking at the screen, my TV screen, and my son, 12 years old, wanted to have a conversation with me. He wanted to check something with me, but I was in Johannesburg, my body, but my spirit, I can tell you, was in England, somewhere in Manchester. That was where my spirit was. But my son taught me a lesson about being present. He said, Dad, I didn't hear anything because I was watching and I was just concentrating and say, oh, on social media, I'm going to be abused by my friends, that my team is losing to our arch rival. So what happened was to break that gap and bring me back home. For me to be present, what did he do? He stood in front of me. He stood in front of me, between me and the TV, because my eyes, my mind, everything was concentrating on the TV, and says, Dad, I need you just for 1 minute. There's something that I super urgently need to check with you. So this is how we did that. But my son is empowered. He's able to do that, yeah? Because at home, on the table, I've talked about the table, we have set certain ground rules on the table, because a man of value has to take responsibility, and the responsibility starts at the table, because at the table you do several things at the table. So the first thing, you provide personal leadership, you provide directional leadership, you provide practical leadership. I've empowered my 2 children. I have two children, my daughter, Sakile, and my son, Junior. So I've got 2 children. So I do this leadership, spiritual leadership for them, personal leadership, directional leadership, practical leadership. So I set standards at the table because I've been entrusted, because fatherhood is not a walk in the park. I've been entrusted, yeah, with the care of loved ones. But where do I have that? Where do I show up? I show up at the table. This is where it happens. You know, when we talk about sports analogy, we look at football, for instance, they talk about transition and say the team won in the middle of the park, because that's where everything, success happens in the middle. So the middle of the park, that's where thing. So for us as men of value, the success happens in the middle of the park. The success happens in the table. At the table, this is where we do things. But our problem as men is that we are prisoners of yesterday. That is our problem. We are prisoners of yesterday. We are consumed, we're tethered, if I'm using the language of the millennials, we are tethered to the past, we are tethered to yesterday. So we focus on regrets, we focus on errors, we focus on the past. We are focusing on the rear view mirror. The rear view mirror just needs to give us a glimpse, but we shouldn't stay in the rear view mirror. We should be watching forward. It gives us insight, the rear view mirror. This is what we need to do, but we are focused on that. We are tethered on the yesterday. We're tethered on the past. We need to be looking forward, So we become so indifferent. We become so powerless and hopeless because we're focusing on the past. We should be focusing on the future. And it's linked to the second story that I want to share. It's around the foundation. The other day, I looked at my house and there were some cracks. There were some cracks. And I was talking to my son. I said, my dad, my late dad, used to talk about this, and I'm seeing them, but there's a lesson on the cracks on the wall. And this is an important lesson. The cracks on the wall, please be careful. Where do you focus on? Do you focus on peppering them and covering those cracks? Or do you focus to the source, to the foundation? What causes the cracks on the wall? I want to put it to you that the cracks on the walls, and most of us have got those, are caused by a shift in the foundation. The earth is always moving, so there's shifts. But sometimes we just call a builder and say, come and do some paperwork, and just you crack those, let's just pepper those cracks. We are not addressing the core of the issue. The core of the issue is the foundation. It's not those cracks. Those cracks are a manifestation of a bigger issue. And this is what we need to focus on. And this is the inspiration, the insight from the quote from Utatu Desmond Tutu, when he was saying, why are we always pulling men from the deep end without looking at upstream? What happens in the upstream? So the upstream is for us to focus at the foundation. What is our foundation? Where is the alignment or the misalignment that is happening within the society? Again, is that men are not showing up. That is our major issue. Men are not showing up. Men are not at the table, because at the table, this is where you find out what's happening with homework. This is where you inculcate the values at the table, when you're seated around at the table. And here, this applies to both gender, because this program is not only for men, but also for women. So it applies to all of us. We need to sit at the table. And when we're seated at the table, we're showing up. We are being present, because one of our challenges is that we're not being present, So for instance, at the Phiri homestead, when it's time for dinner, the phones are put away. But I was talking about motion detectors. I was talking about movement. But the movement was, we went to Shit Street and we bought a small basket. Because our children, they would prefer to be connected. They want to be online. So we bought a basket and you had to do motion. You had to take your phone literally and put it in the basket, because we must be role models and say we are now at the table, because at the table, that's where we disciple, that's where we grow, that's where there is emotion, that's where there is action. Action happens on the table. At the table, it's where everything happens. It's where victories happen. Because our role for our children is not what we say. They observe what we act, how we act, and it applies to them. It affects them later on. So our actions today have got a generational impact tomorrow. So we need to be very careful in terms of what we do. So it's action. So it's that moment, the movement that I'm talking about, that we need to make sure that there is a motion detector. So if we can use that analogy, so that motion light won't go on until there is movement. And that movement, it's us being exemplary. It's us moving from ordinary to extraordinary. So our children, because we need to leave a legacy for them, we need to pass the baton. What are we saying? So how do we speak to my wife? How do I speak to my wife? How do I speak to my children? Are they fully empowered? Because once you empower them, you start having trust. Our problems in society are twofold. It's lack of trust, and most of it driven by lack of effective communication. So you need to be able to give feedback. I've empowered my children. They give me feedback and say, Dad, but here, this was not good. In future, we ask you to do this. But they give me feedback in such a way that I do not attack them. They give me feedback that I look at two concepts. And I've taught my children that. I've taught the people that I mentor. I mentor 41 people across the world, in Senegal. This morning I had a session with one of my mentees in Senegal. So I mentor people from different countries in Zambia, Zimbabwe, where I come from, here in South Africa. And we talk about that we need to have effective communication. We need to be able to listen. God gave us one mouth and 2 ears so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. This is what is important. But feedback needs to have a framework, So we call it appreciative feedback. And it's all about building confidence, And then we've got constructive feedback. So my son will sit me down and say, Dad, I need to give you some constructive feedback. When you're watching your match, you're not present, Dad, and I just wanted 1 minute of your time. That's why I stood in between you and the TV just to break that aspect, I stood in front of you to make you present. I wanted you to come back. So Dad, in future, when I come, I know I respect your space. When I come, there was something urgent. If you can give me presence. Thank you. I've learned. This is how they give feedback. And he is using the same thing. My son is using the same thing with his friends, with the neighbors, because we are going to change our society one brick at a time. Let us not be unreasonable and think that we can change it overnight. It will break. We need to change it. We take steps to change. We need to change. We take steps to change. One brick at a time, But all of us have got a responsibility. All of us, we've come here this morning to interact and discuss about the men of value, about our influence, about what happens upstream and what happens downstream. How can we be impactful? How can we use our knowledge, our influence for impact? Because that's what it's all about. Are we focusing on the rear view mirror? Or are we focusing forward? Are we peppering that crack on the wall without knowing the fundamental issues and the foundational issues, which is the foundation is shaking because the earth is moving. That's why it's cracking. So every 45 days, you'll be coming to pepper that crack until you sort out the issue at source. This is what we need to do. There is toxicity around masculinity and so forth. But we need to understand. We need to understand what is the source. Why are we having this? Brother Sia, the other day when we met as men of value, was talking about some incredible statistics about the children born without fathers on their birth certificates. So, but we need to step back and say, what is driving that? And what is our role? What is my role? Because you need to look at yourself in the mirror and say, who am I being? Who am I being that we're having that? We must take responsibility. Our major problem is that we do not take responsibility. And then what is the call for action? What do we need to do? Because we can't be talking. We need to make a difference. Our role is that we need to leave the world a better place than we found it. That is everyone's mandate. In one way or the other, in your circle of influence, make the world a better place. And the world doesn't belong to Vic and I and Brother Mbulelo and Chaplain Oscar. It belongs to the youth. That's their world. We need to leave it a better place for them. But we cannot be crying and crying and crying. I want to talk about that foundational issue. We saw, I'm quite sure our director of programs will talk about that. We saw what happened with a very influential person during the awards when Will Smith went and slapped Chris Rock based on what had been said. There are lessons that we need to learn. But if you look at the players there that were there, it was quite instructive when one was watching that spectacle, because it was watched globally and it happened live and people were just froze. And Will did what he did and he went back and he was shouting in expletives and so forth. But it was the reaction. So what do we do? What are some of the lessons? And one of the lessons that I picked up there, and I was talking to my daughter around it, was this construct of reaction versus response. It is important. It is important. Do we react or do we respond? And if you can distinguish the two, reaction and response, you'll be able to know what happened there, because that was inexcusable, whatever may have said, because Will Smith is a legend. Will Smith is a role model for many people, for many growing people, for many young adults, and they saw that spectacle happening, and they were devastated by that, and there was some action that needed to be taken. But if you look at the players there were players on the field. We were there also watching live that incident happening, yeah? But there was lots of indifference because society has become like that. We have stopped taking responsibility. There was lots of indifference from the society, from the people that were in that event. They didn't hold him to account and say, this is unacceptable. They allowed him to yep after he'd slept. There was, Chris Rock may have said something that angered him, but his reaction, he didn't respond, he reacted. And now we're seeing the consequences. He's been banned from the academy for the next 10 years. He's been banned, but is it good enough? Is it good enough? There was no precedent. So the promoters of the academy didn't know what to do. They couldn't take away his Oscar. They couldn't take it away because we've got Harvey Weinstein, who had a bigger case, and they couldn't take it away. So there was precedent. So there are so many lessons that we need to learn around that, but it's all to do with response versus reaction. Yeah. So we must make sure that we are responding. So responding means you take a deep breath before you act, because most of the time we are indifferent and then we react. We use emotions when we need to use step back. We need to step back a bit. Yeah. Because we need to make the world a better place. We see what's happening in Russia right now. Again, I can tell you, it's more reaction rather than response. And the devastation that is happening to Ukraine and affecting Africa, I can tell you, Ukraine imports lots of, exports grain to Africa, and we're suffering. And many countries, 47% of countries in Africa, we'll have a grain shortage around wheat, meaning we will have shortages of bread, scones and cakes and so forth, because it's cheaper to import wheat from Ukraine because they've come up with efficiencies than to grow our own wheat in many of the countries in Africa. So they import, then they mix with the little that they actually produce, and then they produce bread, which is a staple food for many people. Again, it's all linked to this. When I look at the conflict in Ukraine, and I link it to men of value, because this is where it's coming to. There is a breakdown of trust. There is a breakdown of conflict management, commitment, accountability. And we're seeing the results. Close to 5 million people have been displaced. So many people dead, infrastructure destroyed. And all that, we have to start all over. We have to start all over. Again, is that analogy of the crack on the wall. You pepper it, or you go to the source. We need to go upstream and say, what is causing this? Why do we have so much anger issues? Why do we have so much anger issues? That is at the core of what Men of Value is all about. So we discuss these things, and then we need to take action. It's fair enough to discuss, have this conversation, but the practical action, and I want to contend to you some things that we need to do. We lack role models. So our youngsters, they lack role models. So Vic, my challenge to you is that all of us here, we need to have a buddy system. We need to start mentoring. I want to lead from the front. I want you to give me opportunity to mentor 5 people, 5 valuators, as my commitment to make this world a better place. And I want to challenge my brother Mbulelo. I want to challenge the Joshua. I want to challenge Chaplain Oscar. Everyone, Wonyewe, we need to lead from the front. All of us, we need to be role models, but we need to have a buddy system, because talking has ended. We now need to go to the next level. The next level is that we need to be impactful. We should be going to the foundation. We should be doing this. And the deal is very simple. The people that we adopt to start mentoring, to start working with, they must also mentor others. And then we start having a chain reaction. This is how we are going to be impactful. Talking, we've set the base. But now we need to go to the next level. The next level is that now we need to be more practical. We want that motion detector to come on, but it can come on when there's movement. And the movement is that I'm volunteering, and I've got all the people that are here. There's 13 of us, they are witnesses. So I want 5 people that I can mentor, that can walk with me in the journey, because mentorship is a two-way traffic. The mentor benefits, the mentee also benefits. This is what we need to do. We need to take our conversation to be more active. It must be an action conversation, not just we talk, but it should be action conversation. We've been peppering those cracks on the wall. We need to change. We need to change. We want to have them solved once and for all. And how we're going to do it is through this, is through building this movement. Vic, value of the Men of Value, I call it a movement. Then it brings the motion detectors. We want them to be lighting all over. I saw where you're coming from. They must be lighting all over, but it starts with us. It's what I was talking about. One voice can change the world, but it's an active voice. It's just not a senseless voice that just talks, but it's an active voice. So this is what we need to be talking about, yeah? It's taking the action, taking the action. Let's go upstream. What is causing our problems? Let's analyze them, but not only end up with analysis. Let's take action. Once we've seen what is causing these problems, let's take action. But it starts with one voice, and that one voice can change the village. And if it can change the village, it can change a province. If it can change a province, it can change a country. If it can change a country, it can change the world. So for now, I just want to stop here. And I know there'll be questions, and let's engage. Vic, over to you. Thank you very much.
No, thank you, Jeff. Wow. What a nice analogy of at the table. I think that was really, really good. And when we talk about certain things not being done, that sitting around the table is definitely one of them. And actually not being present is also being one of them. So let me, folks, if you've got questions, if they've got anything that you want to add, please either put it in the chat group, put your hand up, but let me just quickly give a summary. I was writing some notes. At the table, be present, cracks on the wall, focusing on the past. Men are not showing up. You know, your action today has generational impact, not just impact to you now. How do we speak to each other, my wife, my children, get feedback, effective communication, change society one brick at a time, take responsibility, leave the world a better place than it was before. And obviously the discussion around Will Smith, action, response and reaction, and role models, the buddy system. You've committed to 5. Questions, discussion points, anything somebody wants to say in relation to that. There's a question, what requirements for one to be mentored? I don't think there are any requirements. You just put your hand up and say you want to be mentored. There's no application form you have to fill in. Just say, I want to be mentored. And there are no requirements for there. Mblelo.
Thank you, Jeff, for such a wonderful talk. And the areas that have been summarized by Vic are the same areas that I also looked at in terms of your talk. And thank you for raising a lot of things that we need to think about. And perhaps what I would like to do also, sorry, I spilled water. That's why you see me looking sideways. I apologize for that. The other thing that I think we need to, you spoke about cracks on the wall, and you also spoke about going upstream, and you also mentioned Will Smith's issue with the Oscars. I think I'm glad that we also have some ladies in the session, and I would love to hear from them. In particular, because there seems to be confusion. One of the things that you have said, Jeff, is the fact that we need to leave this world a better place. Some of us have already, because of our age, we have coping mechanisms that we have sort of come up with over the years. So we're able to navigate our way through the world. But I think young people probably are the ones that are going to have a challenge in terms of how to navigate their way through the world. And the challenge that I want to raise, which is why I was talking about ladies earlier on, men, in fact, not me, let me say men, males, because I always distinguish between males and men. Males are born and socialized in a particular way in terms of what their role is, particularly in relationships. We are raised to have an understanding that our role in terms of relationships is to lead, provide, and protect. Not in that order. You can put it in whatever that you want to put it, in whatever order you want to put it. Lead, protect, and provide. What the current narrative that is coming out in terms of the society, which is sort of confusing a lot of young people that are coming up, is the fact that you hear now contemporary women that talk about the fact that they don't want to be led by men. Secondly, they don't want to be provided for by men. They can provide for themselves. And recently, I think some of you have seen, they also say they don't want protection from men. They can protect themselves. And I'm left with a question that says, okay, how are we supposed to raise young men in terms of what their role is in terms of society? If the very issues that we all knew were the cornerstone or the foundation of being transitioned from being a male to being a man are the ones that contemporary women, and I'm not saying all women, but there seems to be a narrative that goes in that direction that says, I can provide for myself. I can lead myself. I don't need leadership from a man. I don't need protection from a man. I mean, if you look at the example that you made of Will Smith, I mean, there is a narrative that came out of that, you know, where, for instance, Jada said, I don't need to be protected. I can protect myself. Now, which then makes whatever that he did then nonsensical, because according to him, he was protecting his wife's honor. So there seems to be a challenge. And one of the things, I mean, I have my own views, but I just wanted to hear from ladies in terms of what is the thinking? Is it a common narrative in terms of the fact that the very foundations that we knew as men or males growing up, those that make a man, in other words, that were used to transition males from being males to being a man, are the very things that seem to be not what is contemporarily required by females in terms of contemporary society, which then creates the cracks that we're talking about, Jeff, earlier on in terms of relationships. So I want to leave it there. Maybe if I can just get some feedback, or we can get some feedback, because I don't think that we need to be in the dark. We need to be able to raise young males to being a man in a proper way. Thank you.
Let me take these other 2 points, Jeff, and then we can all converse. So I think Oscar, are we going to do who was up first, or are we going to do ladies and gentlemen? Okay, looks like we're going to do whose hand up was first. Yes, Oscar.
No. I think maybe it's who can go ahead. Yeah, sure. I don't want to spoil the flow now. We want to hear from women. Thanks.
Yes, indeed. We need to hear from the ladies.
Thank you, Oscar. Thank you, everyone, and welcome to the session. I'd like to answer Mbulelo's question. So it's so funny you mention it as well, because when you and I had a conversation just before the session about this, so I think it's difficult and confusing for both men and women. For instance, as women, I feel like, you know, you grow up in an environment where the father figure sometimes isn't up to par, or, you know, doesn't hold a certain standard. And then you grow up thinking that, okay, as a woman, it's just very, very important to make sure that I've got all bases covered. It's important that I have my finances straight. It's important that I have, you know, a roof over my head. You have to have all these things in order, and you need to do this by yourself, because, you know, you don't want to rely on another person who will potentially let you down. So maybe I need to give context to that is, you know, in most Black families, and when you have a single, not a single mom, sorry, a housewife or a home executive, that's what they call them now, a home executive, you, in most cases, you know, you realize that they're miserable, or they're unhappy, or they always need to ask for permission to do certain things. And it's discouraging. Well, I was a young lady growing up in a similar situation, and you realize that, okay, if I want to have a comfortable life, if I want to be okay, I can't put my happiness, or to the point that was made, I can't let someone else provide for me. I'd need to do that myself, or I can't give someone else, you know, a chance to do things that I should be able to do for myself so that I'm okay. So I think sometimes it depends on the person's background as well, or how they were raised. Because I'm one of those people who needs to make sure that I have everything covered, all bases covered, so that, you know, I'm able to take care of myself, so that, you know, history doesn't repeat itself when I do decide to have children as well. So I think maybe it's an insecurity thing, or what happened in your past, and you're so afraid that it's gonna repeat itself, and you're gonna let that happen because you witnessed your parent or your mom being so unhappy in that connection. So you don't want history to repeat itself. So I think that's where the confusion comes from. Oh, go ahead, Uncle Vic, I'm done.
No, well done, well done. Absolutely true. I think maybe one of the things that we need to talk about very upstream is why is it that protection of women is important? I'll touch on that. My wife is here. Okay, my wife, and then you, Oscar. We haven't forgotten you. Mrs. Rankin.
Hi. Yeah, well, it's a very interesting point that Mbulelo is raising. I just think that maybe from a man's perspective, it's always very important to understand the women in your house, and women meaning your wife, your daughter, who could also be like in the 20s, or the young daughters that, because the thing is, if you have a strong woman that maybe might have been raised by just a female, and that's all they've been experienced too. Her experiences are going to be very different, or her what she's needing from a man is going to be very different to maybe another female that maybe has been raised by both men and women, like a man and a woman, so for instance, in my space, I love the fact that my husband can protect me and my family, but another woman might not feel the same way. In fact, others are very strongly against the fact that they want to be protected by men, and I think, I see it particularly in women that are doing very well for themselves, in industries that feel that, they've earned their rights to be in particular leadership positions, and also the ones that they've actually fought to actually be at the table. Like, for instance, Jeff mentioned being at the table, but being at the table, for maybe other women, it's the fact that, men, in corporates do not recognize them. So as a result, they fight. So you find that a person takes that fight that they are experiencing in corporate, and they take it home, So now when you're at home, you don't also know now how to relate to your husband, because your husband is actually not your work counterpart. So it's, we find ourselves in very challenging environments, so, but I think, importantly for us, it's important to always center everything around our values, our core values, because at the end of the day, you've got your own set of values as a mom, as a wife, in your family. And then also at work, there are also a set of values that are at work that you also need to live by. So I think, but a very interesting concept, that one has to obviously think about. So the point around Jada, it's very interesting, but you can see that Jada, Will's wife, she's got her mom and her dad, so it's interesting that she feels strongly that, the husband should not have protected her, because, she can protect herself. But if you followed her career, you'd see that she's actually a very strong, independent female. And if Will knew better, he probably might not have done what he did, because, she's actually quite outspoken, so it's quite interesting. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. R. Thank you, Mrs. R. Thank you very much. Oscar, Pastor, please, let's not...
Thank you so much, Prof. Am I audible?
Loud and clear, Roger.
Loud and clear. All right, thanks to Jeff for the presentation and quite interesting points. I want to start by a comment that was a quotation rather, that was once made by Prem Rawat, who said, I quote, the world does not need peace, we need peace. Basically, maybe starting with the issue of, let me start at the end, the issue of Will Smith. Actually, there was a show, I don't know whether you saw it, there was a show where Bishop T.D. Jakes was interviewing Denzel Washington. And before he commented, Denzel mentioned something else to say, who are we to judge, you know? Meaning that, you know, these people, the so-called celebrities, personalities, they go through so much. There are so many underlying issues. And it links to what you were mentioning earlier, Jeff, the foundation, because scenarios of that nature, they trigger, you know, your space. Are you stable? Are you at peace? I mean, you look at Will Smith, there was a lot that was going on in their marriage. They were from solving stuff, and this happens. Now the gender issue comes in again, you know, of protection. Was there a need to protect me? I mean, you find yourself in a miserable position, vulnerable and all that. We can only imagine what is going on. It's complicated. We all have different views. But what I want to say is that maybe for us as the movement, the least that we can do is to ensure that in our surroundings, you know, peace prevails. Someone once spoke about the adversity intelligence. Jeff mentioned, he's been through so many countries that what we see here is a fraction of what is happening in other countries. Those are things we need to share so that we broaden the horizon, and so is our thinking in terms of our epistemology, the way we see the world, so that we can relate and respond better, you know, to situations. Because there's quite a lot that is happening out there. More so, Pravik, in terms of also mental issues, you know, the pressure that men are going through, even the very feeling that we should be protective of women. Meantime, we are wounded ourselves. Who's addressing our wounds? So it's quite a number. It's quite a number of things. And another thing I wanted to mention is that talking about the table, Mr. Phiri. On the table, my wish is that sometimes we come to the table, but things are addressed partially. Because the biggest issue on the table is the, how do I put this? It is, you can call it equation, lack of a better word, or the formula. Sometimes we lack, you know, in that department where your formula for success as Jeff Phiri, for instance, out of the world that you've traveled, what equation are you drawing out of it? I'm just making an example. What formula for success would you give, you know, to that mentee? I think that's what is lacking. On Metro, the other day I was listening, they were talking about the job situation. Someone made a very interesting comment that you don't have to help me with the forms for the job, but give me the contacts of people who are helping you to run your business successfully. That was very, very interesting. So yeah. It really unpacked a number of things and a lot of building blocks, but I'll pause there for now. And I mean, the issue of gender is broad. I wish maybe next time we can broaden it. So I would love to hear more of the voice of women when it comes to gender equality and equity issues. Maybe that can be a topic for another time, but thanks for now.
Sure, for sure. Thank you. Okay, let's take one last question or hand, and then Jeff will give you a couple of minutes to surmise, and then I'll end off. I hope I'm going to pronounce this correctly. Shivangami, you got your hand up.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm not sure if I'm audible.
Loud and clear.
Just to say a few things. Thank you, Mr. Jeff Phiri, as you were doing the presentation. I'm also a young man. I'm based in Limpopo at a place called Ilim. So I was so impressed hearing Mr. Phiri doing such a presentation. I have noticed some few things that he mentioned. He talked about the issue on the table. To be honest, I was also touched hearing him talking about the issue on the table. Just to note that he said that we shouldn't focus on our past, but noting to say that our past has brought so much cracks. And then when you look now, and then we don't, the people that we are looking onto, saying that maybe our role models are the very same people are also having cracks in their lives. They're also still focusing in their past. And then so my question is, as young men, we don't have, most of our role models are our mothers. Looking at our mothers, they are also going through some past, they are also facing some cracks. So as a young man, my question will be, I can't be a role model while also I'm still focusing on my past. I'm having the cracks. Some of my cracks, I'm still building. You know, there is no one to talk to, because the person that you try to talk to, you can talk to that person for you to get healed. You hear what you were sharing. Some people are talking about you. I heard that there is this and this and this. So on this matter, Mr. Jeff, how do we go about as young men? Because I was also checking here on our Zoom meeting. We don't have many young men. For me, I was like, you know, I have many young men that I'm connected to. If I can try my best just to bring them in next time, because I cannot be a mentor while I'm still having a crack which is not even dealt with. So
Absolutely.
my question is, Mr. Jeff, how do we go about that? How do I deal with my past?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, Jeff, I'm going to give you about 2 or 3 minutes to surmise with some of those questions.
Vic, we need to make sure we have a session. We need 4 hours, we need 8 hours, we need the whole day
2 days.
to talk. And the heartwarming thing is hearing from our young people. We heard from Tseho, we've just heard from Chivangani. And it's important that we listen to the voice. So my starting point, and it also answers partly to what Brother Mbulelo was talking about, is the starting point. My starting point is that everyone has got a story. Every person has a story, So when you're looking at things, there are 2 sides of the coin. So it's important that we understand that every single person has a story. This is where it starts. That's why I love the transparency that was shared by Tseko when she was talking about the lived experience. This is what is happening. So we need to identify all the main players in the equation, to quote Pastor Oscar, that formula, that equation. We need to identify who are the main protagonists, who are the main players here. So we've got young men, we've got young women, we've got parents, mothers, fathers, we've got grandparents. So we need to identify all of them and say, what is their role? What role does each person play? Because the relationship has been broken. Trust has been broken. This is why it's because of these lived experiences. So we cannot blame the women that are saying, I don't want to be led now, because based on what I've observed with my mother, what she went through. I'll give you statistics right now in Europe. 50% of the divorces within the Christian families, are linked to lack of communication and finances. The other 50% are still staying in marriages, not because they still love, but because of kids and finances. That is the statistic that has just come out of Europe, And that statistic we could take and implement it and juxtaposition it in Africa, here in South Africa. It might be the same thing, that some people are staying in these relationships, toxic relationships, for kids and for finances, that they cannot do it on their own. So if a child is raised with that the mother says, if I was financially independent, I wouldn't be here being abused. The kid, it stays in their mind. It stays in their mind. They say, not under my watch. So they draw a line in the sand and say, not under my watch, because my mother has gone through this. I do not want it to me and to my children. So I want to be my own person. This is what is happening, So everyone has a story, and we need to start from there, yeah? But it's how do we regain the lost pride? How do we regain the lost trust? Because this is what is important, yeah? So there's a quotation that I want all of us to go away with. It's from Alvin Toffler. He talked about the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those that do not read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So this is what we need to do. What do we need to learn, unlearn, and relearn? Because there is so much anger, bitterness. We need alignment. So the one word to answer most of our challenges is alignment. We do not have alignment now. We need alignment. So we need to go back to basics. Going back to basics is the one that will say we need to sort out the foundation. Let us not, you know what we're doing. We are going to the doorknob and polishing it, spitting on it and polishing it. We need to really shake the tree hard. But how do we shake the tree hard? It's by having these tough conversations. We must have what I call crucial conversations, these tough conversations. I think somebody was talking about that at the table sometimes. I think it was Pastor Oscar. That at the table sometimes we don't say it, yeah? We sugarcoat things. We must say it as is. This is what is important. So at the table, we must say it as it is, yeah? But everyone has got a story. And we need to have tough conversations. Tough conversations will take us through. Then my last point is, Vic, we need to keep the main thing. Because sometimes we go around circles and it's like a shotgun approach. We are shooting all over. We need to have laser focus. What do we want for our youth? I'm challenged by Shivangami. He's challenged us. As youth, he's made a commitment that he wants to bring more youth, that they should come and have these conversations. But the youth, their attention span is quite limited. They want to have action-oriented conversations, yeah, that they see the outcome, they see that there is light at the end of the tunnel. But our next thing, he must come. I want to mentor him. He is one person that I want to mentor. So we must exchange numbers so that he starts getting the impact, because he's already made a commitment and he's action oriented. He said, I want to bring more of the youth so that they're exposed to this, because that's our aim. Our aim is to challenge us, that you go and look at yourself in the mirror and do not point a finger at somebody else. The finger must face, who am I being that the youth are confused? That is the conversation that we need to be having, because it talks about accountability and responsibility. The question that we need to be asking is, who am I being? Children's eyes are not shining. Who am I being that my wife's eyes are not shining? Who am I being that the youth in my community's eyes are not shining? Because we must take responsibility. We must take responsibility. It starts with us. The next person is not going to solve it. It's us that are going to solve it. It's us having these crucial, tough conversations with the youth. Brother Mbulelo talked about that. The young girls, the young boys are confused. Of course they are confused. But until we take responsibility and say, it is us. It is us. It is you and me, Vic. It is Pastor Oscar. This is where we need to start. Then we'll make a difference. Thank you.
No. Thank you, my man. I can see you're very passionate about it. And you're right. You're absolutely right. I think, just to end off, we've come to our end of time. You are absolutely right. And I think, folks, here's my last word about roles and responsibilities and going upstream. We must understand the role of protection and why we protect. When God created this heavens and the earth, he created man, right? But what's interesting, and I want you to go away and think about this, he created man first, then he created woman. But who did he create to procreate on this planet? Not man, woman. We cannot exist as a species of human beings without women. Do you know that? Women can exist without men, because you don't need necessarily a man in order for you to procreate. But we as a species can't exist without women. And the power of protection in terms of protecting women is the power of protecting that. So when we understand the role of protection, the vulnerability of when women are creating life, or the vulnerability of the ability for women to create life. They are the only species that we have as human beings that can create life. Eliminate that, get rid of that, we're all finished. We're going to be like dinosaurs, extinct, right? So understand the functionality of when it comes to a man's role to protect. And when we talk about honor, define honor, right? It's not whether you're happy or not unhappy. That's not honor. So thank you, everybody. I really, Jeff, thank you for everything that you've said today. It's just a list of notes. But the takeaway here is that we are going to let those motion sensors move. We are going to adopt this idea of a buddy system. We're going to inherit this idea of a mentoring system. And we're going to challenge all of you to make this world a better place for each other. And I also want to challenge you not to take the stereotypical everyday news that's out there around what is the definition of. I want you to go back, as Mbulelo would say, upstream and try and diagnose the reasoning behind certain things. Because the more we accept what's coming to us, then the less it is that we're going to understand what it was meant to be. So thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for your attendance this Saturday, very cold afternoon. And we do wish you all a safe and happy weekend, and not to mention a warm one. But Jeff, once again, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Powerful and inspiring words. Let us all change the world one brick at a time. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll catch up again. Thank you, Jeff, Mr. Phiri. Thank you, Mbulelo, our pastor who's here, our ambassadors. Thank you to the Value Add team. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for all your contributions and involvement. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great afternoon and weekend.
Thanks, Finos. Bye.
Thank you for watching this Value Add on the go recorded live session. If you enjoyed this session and would like to learn more, please head through to valueadd.co.za/members. By becoming a member, you will be able to join our live and interactive sessions. This will allow you to ask the host questions, but also meet our other Value Add family members who are part of this course. You will get access to all of our on-the-go recorded live sessions, as well as our other Value Add sessions, including the Mogul Masterclass, Leadership Masterclass, and Career Discussion Academy. So, we hope that you decide to join the Value Add family by heading through to valueadd.co.za/members. Until then, we hope that you stay inspired to make better choices for tomorrow.